Welcome, my friend Luis. It's a big pleasure to receive you in my channel. And today we are going to talk about the book, Brave New World from Aldous Huxley. It's a big pleasure to receive you in my channel in this opportunity to talk about this book. This novel is so famous today. This book presents a nightmarish vision of a future society. And Professor, before I'll talk, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in your channel and to be talking to your audience. Yeah, my name is Luis. I am a teacher in the University Center of Anápolis, an English teacher for the past 11 years, and I also work as an international consultant for the International Affairs Center in the University Center of Anápolis, Evangélica. And let's go. Let's debate this book. It's a fantastic book, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I have some questions about the book. In your opinion, what's the importance of the title?
Well, when we look at the title, Albert, we have to think that it is based after one of the Shakespeare's plays, right? The Tempest. And I think it's an ironic take that John, one of the main characters in the book, like his opinion of that society, right? So when he says, "Oh, brave new world," he's not actually surprised or amazed by that new world. I think that he is pointing out how superficial and how shallow those people really live, because when he was in the reservation in Malpais, and all he heard of that society was from his mother Linda and from the books that he had access to, which was the complete work of William Shakespeare. He could only imagine what that society looked like, right? So he had a very I would say even naive and romantic view of what that society was like. And when he finally was able to go there, I think that all the expectations that he had created were kind of not met, or at least not entirely met. So in a sense, he was kind of frustrated. So when he says that, "Oh, brave new world," he's not necessarily acknowledging how great that society was, but rather expressing his frustration on how shallow those people actually are. It's like if we could, take a step back and analyze our society today, and we see, how we base ourselves and our values in terms of, consumerism, or, how superficial we tend to value people on their belongings. For example, you're only cool, or if you're only good or successful if you're driving the latest car, or if you're living in the best house. If your phone is the one that was launched this year, right, then you're regarded as a good person, and how shallow that is. So if we could, step back and look at our own society today, wouldn't we also be saying brave new world in an ironic way?
In your vision, what is the central or primary purpose of the history? Is the purpose important or meaningful?
Oh, yes, of course. I think that the main story, the main topic that the book addresses is, human connections and human relations, and how we long for those connections, and how we really want and how we really need to connect to other people on a higher level, right? I think that's basically what makes us a society, right? Is the idea that we see ourselves in our peers, and that we create an identity among ourselves, right? And the book is all about that, right? So first of all, you have Bernard Marx, who is someone who, even though he is an alpha plus, he had all the conditions to be a very strong and successful person given his background. He's an alpha plus, right? So he's the best that human beings can be, in that society. And but he doesn't. He's a little short, and he's a misfit. He doesn't look like an alpha plus, and that makes him question the whole system, right? And we may even think that his intentions are good, but I think that in the end we find out that he's not that noble, because when we have him who finds himself, questioning those practices, like, oh, this is wrong. I don't think I agree with all this. But the moment he returns from the savage reservation from Malpace with John the Savage, and he almost instantly becomes this celebrity, he kinds of the society starts treating him with respect. He feels very comfortable with that, so I question his motivations in terms of why he feels that that society, he did not belong. Because in the end, he did not belong, but just for his appearance, because the moment that he could use the privileges of being an alpha plus, he went for it, and he was really comfortable with all that. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have John the Savage. And John the Savage is in a very tough situation because, first of all, he's not savage enough for the reservation because he's white, because of his background, so he's not savage enough. But when he is brought to London, right, to the world state, he's not part of that society either. So he kind of stays in between worlds, and he never belongs. Right? And the same thing goes for Lenina, right? Lenina is still trying to make sense of that world and how she can adapt. She doesn't feel like having multiple partners or, living life the way she's expected to doesn't fulfill her, so she longs for something other than that, for something bigger than that. So in the end, all of our characters, they're all just trying to connect to people in a deeper, meaningful way that, spoiler alert, never happens, right? So in the end, we kind of have these people who are forced to live life in a certain way, but wished it was different, but, never got around to actually making it happen. Right. So I would say that the purpose of the book is to show us that in our life, we need to belong. We need to feel part of the society. Right. And how hard it is if society itself makes a lot to make us feel out of place, because that's one of the realities that we feel. Right. Our system thrives and feeds itself on our unhappiness, on how we're not feeling like we belong, or we're not feeling like we are worth anything. So this feeling of dissatisfaction is almost the motor, is almost what gets us going, right? This feeling of, this everlasting need for improvement and never feeling actually fulfilled, right? So I think that this is the main theme of the book.
Oh, thanks. So you think, why is the society in Brave New World considered dystopian rather than utopian?
Oh, it is completely dystopian, right? If you analyze the history of the book, right, it is alongside 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. Yeah. The great dystopian novels of the 20th century, right? And I always tell my students that we always have to analyze books in the contexts in which they were written, right? So this book was written in 1931 or 1932, if I'm not mistaken, right? So what were we having in that time, right? We were in between wars. right? We had just passed World War I, and were about to start World War II, right? Two of the deadliest wars we had in the history of the world, right? And this comes in a very significant time, because if we stop and think about it, right, what did the 19th century represent? We had a lot of hope for the 20th century, because in the 19th century we had the Industrial Revolution, the second Industrial Revolution. People were getting used to the conveniences of modern life, such as electricity, right? We had the airplane, Santos Dumont flew his first airplane in the beginning of the 20th century. So people had a lot of expectations. People had a lot of hope for the 20th century. And right in the beginning of the 20th century, in the second decade, in 1914, we had the First World War, right? That at the time was called the Great War, because we didn't have World War II yet. So the Great War, you had tens of millions of people dying, and all that technology that was developed, all that hope that people had in terms of getting the human civilization to the next level. They saw it being used for something that is very bad, which is the war, right? So airplanes being used, the Zeppelins that the Germans used, all the technology, all the things that were created and that supposedly could be used for good things, being used to make war. So people started questioning, okay, so is this advancement, is this technology really good? Because what has this brought to us? This has brought us more death and more destruction, right? So when Aldous Huxley creates a world that applies the mass production, right, system that Ford invented, and applies it to human life, it's kind of like, wait a minute, is it really good? Is it really a good thing for us to be developing? Is technology always a good thing, right? What if we apply those, that logic to other things, to bad things? Is it possible that we are going somewhere dark? So I think that this is the base of that dystopian novel that Aldous Huxley writes, right? He wants us to believe, or to immerse ourselves in a society that applies very important technology advancements of the 19th and 20th century, but in a very dark way, right? And he allies that, he kind of merges that with things that are very real for us. For example, the stratification of society. A society divided in castes, right? The alphas, the betas, the deltas, gammas, and epsilons, right? Which is predetermined, even before you were born, and after you're born through conditioning, and if you think about it, now, how different is that from our own society? How much of your future is determined by yourself, and how much of it is determined by the place where you're born? If you're born into poverty or if you're born into wealth, what are the chances of you becoming wealthy if you're born into poverty? Statistics show that it can take up to 10 generations for you to break that. So in a sense, it's kind of like the thing in the book, right? We are almost predetermined, right? All right, if you're born into that, you're probably going to die like that, right? It's not as dark as, even in our DNA is programmed to that, but conditioning, yes, of course.
Yeah, in this book, we have a lot of quotes, and quotes about love and sex, quotes about politics, quotes about technology, quotes about happiness. It's very important what you talk about to us. And I have another question. How do you think in the culture of Huxley word state compared to our current culture? Why John find the word state to be an empty society, in your opinion? Why did John find the word state to be an empty society?
Because it was, right? I think that things that we need to take into consideration here is that we're seeing the world state, that society, through John's eyes, right? And John has a very romantic and idealized version of society that he heard from his mother, Linda, right? And we have to remember that Linda was forgotten in the savage reservation, and that she was left there, and all she had were the good memories. And if you remember well, you're conditioned to believe that that society is the best society that there can possibly exist. So she also tells her son John about all that, and of course by the works of Shakespeare. So his idea was a very romanticized one, and upon confrontation, he may have gotten frustrated. But I agree with him in terms of that society is shallow, it's superficial, right? Because if you think about it, right, people can have as many partners as they want to. You don't have any connections, right? And then you have one of the main characters who is an every inch an alpha plus, and even he is not happy with it. He can have any woman he wants, and he has had several. That doesn't fulfill him, because this is not what we as human beings, what we long for. It's not what we want. Everything that is superficial is the same thing. It doesn't matter if you drive the latest car or if your phone is the latest phone, right? Things cannot bring you happiness. Happiness comes from within. It doesn't have to be when you compare yourself to others, or by trying to substitute that with things. It just doesn't work that way. So in that sense, that society is completely shallow, it's completely superficial. They don't have any kind of connections. People, they don't have a dependence on each other. Everybody belongs to everybody, if you remember well, right? If everybody belongs to everybody, nobody belongs to nobody. So that's the kind of thing that fails to acknowledge our very human nature, which is we long for something that is significant, that is meaningful, that matters to us. We want to make a mark. We want to make sure that, the world is better when I die. So that idea of you making a difference in the world, that society doesn't allow you to do that.
Yeah. Professor, do you think the Brave New World exhibits feminist ideas?
Feminist ideas?
Yeah.
I would say that it has some ideas that I think are progressive, not necessarily feminist, in terms of sexual freedom, for example. Having multiple partners is not only possible, but encouraged in this society. So a woman is not judged by the fact that she has slept with multiple men, which happens in our society nowadays, right? So a man can sleep with as many women as he wants to, and he's a good guy. The more women he has slept with, the better man he is. Whereas women, they should be pure and, keep themselves pure for the perfect man, right? That's what, a very sexist society believes. And we have an inversion of those values in terms of sexual freedom, which I believe is very interesting, right? But if you stop and analyze it further, all the roles, all the positions of leadership in that society are occupied by men, right? So the world controller is Mustafa Mond, a man. The director of the hatcheries and conditioning is a man. The lead scientist is Henry Foster, also a man. And the jobs that are associated to women are jobs that require fine movement, such as the lab work that Lenina does, or nursing, which brings back those elements of caring and nurturing that are usually associated to women rather than men, right? So that idea, I believe that it actually reinforces some sexist ideas, and the idea of Linda questioning her own body. Is it because I don't look good? Am I too plump? Right? Because John wouldn't want to have her. So in that kind of thing, I would say that it is a rather sexist than feminist.
Yeah. In this book, another thing that claim us and our attention, what are the main conflicts in the novel? What types of conflict? Physical, moral, intellectual, or emotional? Did you take note of?
Yeah, we have many conflicts. I would say that first of all, I like to think of every book that we read is like a dialogue, right? Your dialogue with the author, it's a conversation. So you bring your own impressions and you're always trying to make sense of the book based on what you know. So I think that the first conflict we have is an ethical conflict, right? Should we be making human beings in a mass production way, right? Is it right for you to program people to be what you want them to be? Is it okay for you or for a person to determine what other people are going to be in their future, right? And there's a very fine line there, right? You had a baby recently and you know that. So people now can choose the sex of their babies. So what's the limit? Where do we draw the line, right? Where do we draw the line from, okay, I want a baby, I would choose the sex, or I would choose the color of the eyes. I would choose the color of the hair. I would choose the, body type or whatever. How far is that from actually determine what kind of jobs those people are going to have in the future? What kinds of, it's almost a debate on eugenics if you stop and think about it. So I think that this is the first conflict, is an ethic conflict that we have in terms of moral values, right? I think that another value that is questioned throughout the book is the idea of marriage and the idea of happiness in terms, why didn't John want to be with Lenina? He didn't think he was worth it, right? He wanted to prove himself worth it, right? So what are we trying to do as society? Aren't we all trying to be worth it of something? How many times haven't we sabotaged ourselves in the many areas of our lives because even unconsciously we thought that we weren't worth it, right? The idea that John self-inflicts harm in order to purify him of his mistakes, of his own thoughts, right? So this is another conflict that is very clear for me in the book. Another one is spirituality, right? Who's God in this book, right? This book, the God is Ford, right? And Ford represents a system of mass production that ends up in consumerism. So in the end, our God is buying products, is consumerism itself, is making sure that we have access to as many products as we possibly can, right? So in that sense, their religious act is an orgy, right? So we do have those kinds of conflicts in the book that I think are very explicit and makes us think on our society on a very deeper level.
Yeah, sure. And how essential is setting to the story? Could the story have taken place anywhere else?
I think that's a very good question because, of course, that story was set in a very particular society. And if you think about it, everything kind of converges for that to work, right? Even in the very conception of human beings, right? Because human beings are not born, they are hatched, they are prepared in laboratories, right? For that to work. And I like to think of it, Herbert, as this idea of how close are we from that setting in the book, right? I think that this is what makes this book so current. You know, it's very easy for us to associate a few traits of that society in our own, right? How immersed are we in consumerism and focusing on things that are not necessarily relevant to the advancement of society? You know, what part does technology play in our lives, right? Can we imagine our life without technology? So aren't we kind of dependent on that so much that we kind of become its hostage in a sense, right? And I think that that setting is not that far away from what we have. As I said here, you know, the stratified society, you know, a society divided in castes, you know, maybe we're not officially, we don't name our society in alpha, beta, delta, gammas, and epsilons, but can't we see a pattern there? Can't we see that our society is also a little divided into castes, you know, unofficial and unnamed castes? So in that sense, Herbert, I think that we are much closer to that society than we might, you know, think at a first glance. And that's what's the most scary, you know, identifying our own society, traits of our own society in that completely messed up world. And that can be very, very scary.
Yeah. Professor, thank you very much for your participation. And to make real the book club, it's very important in the university to have the book club and talk about this book, about in your opinion, a nightmarish vision of a future society. And I thank you very much for participating in my channel and talk about this book. It's very important for us to hear about your opinion and about your considerations. Thank you very much.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity. You know, I'm glad to do this. I love reading and I love book club. So it's an opportunity. It's open. It's free for everybody. So whoever wants to join me, please do. It's a fantastic opportunity for you not only to practice your skills in a second language, which is fascinating on its own, but also open your horizons, broaden your worldview in a way that only literature can do. So yeah, I learned a lot from my students, and you know, sometimes they're like 17, 18-year-old students, and their take on sections of the book, you know, is just fascinating. They're really, really amazing. It's really amazing to see how well they can understand and their take on the book. So fantastic. So it is a pleasure to me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm here for next books if you want to.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.